When I did my initial watch of 151 Architectural Digest open door house tours, I was looking at the big picture, focusing on the overarching principles that drove me to madness. But once I saw all your comments, I realized I was missing the trees for the forest. Or really, I was missing the trees and the forest by focusing so much on the wood that was in these houses.
We got our hands on some really cool wood.
So we had a lot of wood influence.
I love wood.
So in this video, we're taking the 154 open doors that I've watched and talking about why size maybe sometimes does matter. Now, I assumed I was done with this spreadsheet, but like an architect working on the Parthenon, I thought, this could use a few more columns. But how many square feet are these columns? Or should these columns be about square feet? Let's go with the square feet of these celebrity houses. Now, I didn't do any sneaky digging to come up with these numbers. I just Googled the celebrity's name, the state or city that they lived in, and square feet. And often an article popped up reporting on the real estate listing and mentioning the size. This also means I don't have them for every house, just 65% of them. I don't have a great sense of space, so let's calibrate our brains to understanding how big a square foot is. And to all my viewers not in the United States, how many times must I apologize? I know. This bed is 33 square feet. This head is under a cubic foot, but it contains tons of feet because I think about square feet. This whole room is 120 square feet and you see about 50 square feet of it. A pickleball court is 800 square feet and so is my 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. A tennis court is 2,800 square feet and a football field is a utterly impressive 57,600 square feet. If you mentally know the size of a house or an independently owned apartment, you can usually look it up on a real estate site and it should tell you the square feet because it's a big part of how houses are assessed and taxed. The median house size in the United States in 2021 was 2,273 square feet. So what does my spreadsheet tell us? The median house size of these 100 celebrity homes is 5,000 square feet, with the biggest being Tyrese Gibson's 25,000 square foot Atlanta home, and the smallest being Sarah Paulson's 500 square foot Malibu tiny home. But these numbers also tell us a lot about density and location. The average New York City residence featured is 3,700 square feet, while the average Los Angeles home featured was 6,500 square feet. And the houses being bigger in Los Angeles also leads to one of the funniest clips of Zed seeming absolutely lost in his 11,000 square foot home.
Nobody in here. Oh wait, I thought that's a different room. Never mind. This is the server room. There's a lot of doors here.
Honestly, it wasn't worth him getting familiar with the house. He sold it already. But I mentioned in the last video how a lot of these houses don't really even appeal to me, despite me being a lowly civilian, and these houses being owned by some of the most popular people. So what's so wrong with them? To me, they honestly look too big. I'm a bit of a realist and I'm just thinking about how a single person could never keep the whole place clean, and how the 30-foot ceilings would make me feel like I was in a Little's book using a spool as a dining room table. But when I started looking at my favorites in the long list of house tours, I realized that most of my favorite houses were under 3,500 square feet. I like the organized clutter of Dita Van Teese's home, the multi-purpose bedroom in Rita Ora's, the kitchen in Kirsten Dunst's house, the pops of color in Mindy Kaling's, the warm lighting in Troye Sivan's, and the long lines of Shonda Rhimes' apartment. The cozy dark tones in Karen Gillian's house, the Little House on the Prairie cosplay in Taylor Hills, the beautiful layering in Adwoa Aboa's townhouse, the tight bedrooms in Sienna Miller's cottage, or the light-filled nooks and crannies in Orville Peck's treehouse. Now, so much of what I like about these homes is my personal style, but knowing that size is a big part of this vortex, I wanted to look at this best-selling book written in the late 90s called The Not So Big House by architect Sarah Suzanka. She was writing this as a bit of a rejection of the growing trend of 80s suburban McMansions, which is often defined as a large, ostentatious house with little architectural integrity. And it's been best satirized on the blog McMansion Hell, which asks questions like, what is that column holding up? In my case, this one column is holding up my entire video essay. But Sarah's book also asks a different question. Do you really need to do all that? Even if you can afford a certain square footage, could you instead have a smaller footprint and spend more on rooms and flow and quality materials? The first line of the book starts with, So many houses, so big, with so little soul. A big part of her philosophy was based on people's needs, not their expectations for a house. What if a house was built around what people want and use every day, instead of some fictional version of yourself who isn't even you? This quote really spoke to me. Although life at the end of the 20th century is quite informal, Emily Post still rules over the floor plans of our houses, making sure that they mind their manners. In most houses, the formal rooms for dining and living are dinosaurs, left over from the turn of the century when Victorian house design followed the social code of the day. Now, it's as if visitors are presented with a stage set, while the people who live there spend their time backstage. But do visitors even want that? She talks about going to a friend's party in their new, large suburban home, explaining that this should be the ideal scenario to use this home with its formal dining room and living room. But the photos she took of the party show that none of the 40 people would leave the kitchen and casual living space that was next to it, despite the food being in the dining room and the host desperately trying to get people to enter the other rooms designed for this type of entertaining. But that party, with everyone perching and leaning in the informal space, reminds me of one of the things I kept hearing in so many of these house tours.
This is magic. Conversations, dancing.
And you know what? Most of the time, that's what happens in here. People come to the kitchen, and you try to get them to go other places. Everybody's in the kitchen around the island.
Viola Davis's husband is describing trying to get people to enjoy the rest of their very nice house, but they just won't leave the kitchen. And as a house gets bigger and bigger, you still only need so much space for your daily activities.
She wanted a lot of dining chairs because she thinks she's going to have big parties. We don't invite anyone over. It's literally us.
But then,
like 4 plates.
I had about 4 plates.
Yeah. Now
you
she
did
has
all the
like
shelves.
dinnerware for 200, but again, just us.
It's just us. This is probably the kind of table that I should have. It's perfect for just you and me, Angel.
But we
Atlas.
don't even sit here. We sit here.
We always sit up here.
Because this is like engaged. There's plugs to like plug things in, and the fast food comes here.
That's true.
So the room that has easy electricity, food and water, and probably a bathroom close by makes sense to become the heart of the home.
All right, guys. So, heart of the home.
Welcome to the heart of the home. It's the kitchen.
So this is the kitchen. I love it so much, the heart of the home.
I mean, it really is the heart of our home, the kitchen.
Here, it's the heart of the house. Someone's always cooking in here.
But yeah, this is 100% the heart of this home.
It felt like the heart of the home, and it really is the heart of the home.
I know they're saying heart of the home, but it got me thinking about hearths. In many of the early colonial homes, you might have one room that was pretty much the everything inside room. It centered around the fireplace where everything was cooked. And if you were inside and not sleeping, you were probably there. And if you were elderly or needed to stay extra warm at night, you might be sleeping in there too. But funnily enough, when colonial homes became reproduced in one of the many colonial revivals, they didn't keep that high efficiency floor plan, instead breaking up a rectangle into equally large rooms for their sole and specific purpose. And while those revivals were occurring, there was an interior designer whose house was anything but a box. Henry Davis Sleeper was building and adding to his house in the early 1900s. And he had 5 themed dining rooms, one of which was a colonial kitchen called Pine Kitchen. And although it's an idealized, dreamy version of this style of home, you can also see it being an everything room. I mean, add in a color-coordinated drink fridge and plenty of outlets, and I think a lot of celebs could be happy here. And if you're wondering, Henry Davis Sleeper's house was 14,200 square feet, so a room that does everything is clearly not a new phenomenon, nor is building a house exceptionally big. But we are fairly consistently in a pong game between closed-off spaces and open floor plans. And for many, the pandemic, with more people working and learning from home, it put a stress test on the very popular open floor plans. A big communal room works best when everyone in that room is experiencing that space together. Not so well when everyone is in that space, but also in the internet space. In Sarah Suzanka's book, she has this assignment to write down every room in your house, how many square feet it is, what you use it for, and how often. The goal is to help you understand how you use your space. And in a not shocking turn of events, when you have a smaller space, you're more likely to use each room regularly. For me, the kitchen is not a place where people hang out, but my dining room is an office, the dinner table, the puzzle table, the blender and microwave room, and also the place to entertain. In her sample, the attic is a catch-all space where everything can be done, but it is not used often. And it made me realize that there were only 4 to 5 times in the AD tours where we saw an attic.
This is the way to my attic, and I thought you might want to come up and see my attic with me.
And in 3 of these, we're seeing the attic as a place for storage. And there's something about Liv Tyler in her crawl space attic showing off her action figures that just charms me to my core.
This is my attic. I haven't been up here for a while. It's very hot. My first driver's license ever. The Late Show with David Letterman, August 2nd, 2001. Frodo. Legolas. We have an Arwen Barbie doll. That's me. This is amazing. We need to hang out in my attic more often.
But this idea of storage that's adjacent to your work is so interesting. I don't think I'm wrong in assuming that these celebs do have so much more stuff than most of us. Like for an attic example, Tan France's attic closet, which appears to span the length of his house.
And I clearly have a lot of clothes because I do that for a living. I will show you what my closet looks like, so come along. This floor runs the whole length of the house. This section here is my husband's. The rest of it is mine.
For many of these celebrities, a big part of what they're storing is their wardrobes. And I often think that seeing the insides of these closets or glam rooms feels much more personal to the celebrity than other parts of the house. This is where they do the thing that they do well, and a lot of times it's the thing they got famous for.
This is my beauty room. If you guys watch my YouTube channel, you guys probably seen this room. This room is just a cute reminder of where I started. I started off in makeup, obviously, and now I literally have Sephora in my house.
I have a very, very close friend who's a shoe designer, so that's why I have this many shoes. And of course, I have all the showbiz shoes here.
You might think that my main takeaway is we need less square feet, but my final consensus might be the opposite. This is the square footage of celebrity homes, and there's not that many of them. But there's a lot of new construction happening in American cities that might be too small. Across the United States, apartment sizes have been declining, with a 54 square foot drop in the past 10 years. And it's not a bunch of people making their beautifully efficient, not so big house. It's that the vast majority of apartments being added into the market are studios and 1-bedrooms. And in Seattle, where I live, from 2010 to 2017, 88 multifamily buildings with an average unit size of less than 400 square feet have been built in Seattle. The only one of these celebrity houses remotely close is Sarah Paulson's beach house, which is often referred to as tiny.
Which is really tiny. Everything about the house is quite cozy because of the size of it. A little tiny house. I know I keep stressing how small the space is. I'm not a big cook, so I was able to have the world's tiniest stove.
As I said, everything is so incredibly small here. We are in my tiny, tiny ship's cabin of a bedroom. Exceedingly tiny backyard.
And in Seattle, over 80% of new units are 1-bedrooms or studios. And when you look at the new apartment construction percentages, you'll see that it's rare to have a 2-bedroom apartment, with 3 or 4-bedroom units being practically unheard of. And when buildings are only providing one type of apartment, appealing to one type of consumer, there is no room for growth within it. You can't move within your building or possibly even your neighborhood if you need a roommate, or start living with a partner, or have kids, or start working from home. So anytime you want to make a big or a small change in your life, your apartment building, your neighborhood, or possibly your city has to change too. And add in all the costly monetary, environmental, and mental strain, and now any change in your life is packaged with a bad 6 months. So a lot of housing has gone down in square footage across the country, but not in the highly considered way of a not so big house. A large part of what she suggests is taking time and consideration to figure out what an individual or a family really needs. And in this case, it's not just an assignment for you. It's something developers and planning committees should be considering and requiring. So cities could grow with a person, not just force them to leave because their life grew. I also think this square footage assignment might be helpful for some of these celebrities too. Since sometimes on these tours, it feels like you're only seeing the rooms that they forgot existed. You can only see so many home movie theaters, 12 to be exact, before you start wondering if they've seen more than 12 movies there. Also, these movie theaters, they need to do some Art Deco styling. Imagine a mural, big red curtains, but do full Art Deco styling, which leaves us with some of the smaller houses and apartments being the most memorable. David Harbour's, Troye Sivan's. You know you're seeing the real usable parts of the house, not just the parts that are for show. Orville Peck kind of said it best in the most recent AD house tour.
I think oftentimes in, especially Los Angeles, you have these like $30 million homes that look like the lobby of a bank or something, and there's just no vibe and no taste, you know? And so I think for me, it's really important for it to feel like a home and feel like it feels like me.
I'd love to hear your square foot thoughts in the comments, but not your foot thoughts squared. If you want more from me on Architectural Digest house tours, I uploaded a reaction to 2 of my favorite AD houses on Patreon. There will be new content every month and reactions to stuff like this, along with some of my favorite reference books, maybe some movie watch-alongs, and all the bonus episodes of my podcast, Someone Lived Here. There you'll get the full Kendra Gaylord experience. I might even show you my stamp collection. That actually made so many of you say I'm not joining. So I'll do what you want. But if that Patreon house feels a little too cozy, maybe not enough square feet, you can always just subscribe here on YouTube. There is unlimited square footage, and we might be putting in a 6th dining room. Bye, everyone.